welcome, Kelly. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you.
Good, good, good. It is great to have you on the show today. And today you're going to be talking about something pretty personal, something about your life and relationships you've had in your life. So, Kelly, just introduce yourself. Give us an introduction, who you are, a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Kelly La Rosa. I am originally from Peru, and I was raised in New York, USA, since the age of 3. So, I guess that's me. But what I came here to talk about, I think, is a book that I'm writing
Mhm.
for. It deals with. Sorry, I. Um, so the book that I'm writing is deals with narcissistic abuse and my experience with it. Um, so yeah, I thought it would be great to let other women know, what it's like and get a better give people a better understanding of, what it is.
Mhm. Why don't you give us a background to your actual relationship? How did your relationship start? Where did how did it start and what was going on?
I met him, we were teenagers. So, right off the bat, that was kind of like I was young, I was naive. I didn't understand what it was to be in a relationship. So we were teenagers and I got pregnant very young. So we ended up getting married, raising a family. And for the most part, in I would say the first 3 years or so were fine. We were relatively happy. We were raising a little girl. And I think what happened was, because we were so young, because I didn't see the signs of him trying to like control me or anything like that. It just kind of escalated as the relationship went on, and we were together for about 12 years. So
Hmm.
it was a very long relationship. Um, but I think, yeah, it was just a matter of him controlling, being very controlling, being very manipulative, using the children against me. Uh, he did something which I found out later that was something called triangulation. So he would talk to my family, talk to my friends, get them on his side so that, they would kind of take his side over mine, even though they were. My relatives, my friends. It's just
Hmm.
a form of like isolating the person. Yeah.
Hmm. When you say you were young, how young were you when you started the relationship?
Um, about 15,
So how old were you when you actually got married?
16. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So and you say for the first 3 years it was okay. So by the time you hit 19, that's when you
Hmm.
started to see signs. And
Yeah.
what were your first signs? What were the first things you started to see? What were the very first things you started to see?
Well, obviously there was cheating. He had an affair. Um, I think the main thing that I see it now, but I didn't see it then, was the controlling of funds. Any monetary, any money that we had, it was all under his control. He played it off as, oh, I'm better with money. I know how to handle money. Let me take care of the bills so you don't have to worry about that stuff. And
Mhm.
I was, like I said, I was young and naive, and I was like, oh, cool. I don't have to worry about money. That's great. Like he'll take care of the bills, he'll take care of the rent and put food on the table. That's great, but slowly it became more of, when I started working, my paycheck would go to the joint account. I never had a a bank account of my own. So
Okay.
that's like a major sign, I think, if I were to, caution other women in these
Mhm.
types of
Mhm. Mhm.
situations, not being allowed to have your own bank account would be one. I ended up having to, towards the end of the relationship, I ended up having to take a job that gave cash tips. So I was a waitress for a while. And because of the cash tips, I was able to hide that money and get out eventually,
Hmm.
because direct deposit, everybody thinks it's great, but for somebody who's in a narcissistic relationship, it's not so great.
And it's really strange because when you talked about having a bank account, you said not being allowed to. You used the word allowed, and
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's very much about you not feeling you have any control and somebody is telling you what to do and how to do it. Did you have any other signs? Like, especially you said you have a daughter. Were there other
We had
signs?
two daughters together.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, there were a few times where he would try to control my behavior by, threatening to punish the child. For example, there was one time he was kind of we were always visiting his family. So we were visiting a cousin of his, and he, you know, I don't remember how it started exactly, but um I think I wanted to leave, or I wanted to go home or something like that. And basically he said, "Oh, stop telling me what to do, or I'll spank the child." And I'm like, that's that makes no sense. That's ridiculous. Like, so it
Mm-hmm.
started an argument in front of his family, and I turned out to be the unreasonable one because, his family were saying, "Oh, well, just stop telling him what to do," like simple. And it wasn't so simple to me, because that's a form of controlling and using basically weaponizing our children.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And when did you decide that enough was enough and you wanted to get out? When I mean you were in it for 12 years. That's a long time
It is a
to
long
just
time.
yeah,
Yeah.
to keep it
And
going.
I
I mean,
think, yeah,
because
and
you talked about
that's
the first
that's
3 years being okay, but 9 years,
right.
that's a long time. That's a very
Yeah,
long time.
so the problem with narcissistic abuse is that it creeps up on you. So yes, the first 3 years were great, and then we had a falling out, we would break up, we would get back together, he would apologize, and this is the cycle. He would use manipulation tactics very cunningly. So he would do something that would upset me. We'd have an argument, it would escalate, we would fight. There were points where we would, almost break up. I'd go to my parents' house, and of course he narcissists tend to need some sort of supply. So if you're not giving them the attention that they require, then
Mhm,
they'll reach out again. And so he would promise that he was going to change. He would promise that, he would be better, he would be more loving. And at times he was. There were times when, we would have a big argument about, me having friends, at all. And so, I had a group of friends that we would hang out, we would go, have dinner every so often, and he didn't like that. And so there was a point where we broke up. I went to my parents' house and I started going out with my friends again. But then he started joining, kind of like showing reaching an what do you call that? What's the phrase? Offering an olive leaf, an olive branch.
okay.
So, he's showing me that, oh, it's okay to hang out with your friends. Look, I'm friends with them too. So that, especially when someone is young and naive, like I keep saying, like it's like, okay, well, he's trying. And even if you're not young and naive, I think just the effort that they show sometimes, it kind of it reels you back in, you
Mhm,
know. So it's hard because you're not sure what is real, and
mhm,
that's the point. They do things so that you're confused, so that you're isolated. Um, and yeah, it's just really difficult to realize and see, now that I'm out of it, it's been over 10 years now since I've left that relationship. I see now, what he did, but it's difficult when you're in it.
Mhm. What was your relationship like with your family when you were during the time you were in the relationship? Because as he isolated you, did you feel that you didn't see your family or didn't get to communicate with them or
I saw them enough. My parents lived fairly close. I have one sister, and my parents are still together. Um, so I saw them enough, at least once every 2 weeks, and they lived fairly close. So whenever I felt like I needed to see them, I would go there. But it's a very strange thing to talk about when it comes to family, because again, you don't know what's real, right? So he obviously won over my parents. In the beginning, because we were so young, my parents didn't really agree with the relationship, but eventually, um, they did warm up to him. They saw him as a son, as part of the
yeah.
family. But because of that, I think he used that as another manipulation tactic. So anytime we
Mhm.
would have an argument, he would be the first one to run to my parents and tell them what happened and his side of the story, so that they would be upset with me, because he would only say, what I did. He would never say what he did to instigate
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
argument. So it was it was hard. I felt very alone. I felt very isolated. I felt like my family didn't really have my back, but
Mhm.
it wasn't their fault either, because he manipulated them, you know?
Mhm.
So at the point where we actually where I did leave him, I actually, just packed all my things and left while he was at work, and I never came back. I did cut off my family for a few days, just because, one, didn't they were more traditional. My parents are the type that will say, oh, well, he's your husband, you have to stay with him no matter what, you have to work things out. And it's easier said than done when it comes to someone that's a narcissist. Um, so at the time that I did finally leave him, I had to cut them off, because I knew that he would be talking to them. I knew that
Mhm.
he would give his side of the story first, and I would be left as the person to blame. But
Mhm.
eventually they saw that, this is for real. This is, you know,
Yeah.
I
A couple of
moved
things,
on.
a couple of a couple of things you said there. You talked about because you mentioned your parents have been together all the time. And then you talked about earlier on, you talked about the fact that you would split up with them a few times and you went back every time. And it's the going back every time. Did you feel like guilty about, well, I've got to, I'm in this married, so I'm gonna stay married, as opposed to this is not working for me, I need to end it.
Right. Yeah, it was a little both. Um, Again, like I said, my parents are very traditional. They had a lot of
Mm.
influence, as far as like, when you're in a relationship, you tend to go to your parents and seek advice from them. And so
Mhm.
the advice
Mhm.
that I would always get was, well, you have to try to make it work, and try
Okay.
not to be so disagreeable, and because he was manipulating them just as much as he was manipulating me, it made it hard to
Mhm.
actually leave. I felt throughout the 12 years that we were together, I really did feel like it was my fault. I really did feel like, well, maybe I'm the problem, but that wasn't the case.
Mhm. And what was the trigger? What was the trigger that made you say, "This is it. I've had enough. I'm getting up and going."
Oh, um, so his whole life he always wanted to be a police officer.
Mhm.
Um, so in New York City, where we were, He knew that in order to be a police officer, you need, I think, 60 college credits in order to apply.
Mhm.
He didn't have that. He had no plans to go to college because we had a family, we were young, he didn't think that working and going to school would be conducive to like a family environment, whatever the case may be. His brother had moved to Baltimore, Maryland, and found out that there you just need a high school diploma or equivalency. Um, so we moved to Baltimore. Um, I liked it there. It wasn't a bad place to live. I really enjoyed living there, but because he was in the police academy at that time, the things that they taught him and in the academy just kind of escalated the troubles in our relationships. Um, Perfect example, and I write this in my book. There was some class that he took in the police academy that talked about a police officer who went got home from work and caught his wife cheating on him in bed with another, and he shot them, killed them both, and apparently got away with it because, temporary insanity.
Mhm.
He came home with that story, not thinking, oh, this is a cautionary tale, like be careful, put away your guns before you get home, keep them at work. No, he saw that as, hey, if I ever catch you cheating on me, I can kill you both and get away with it.
Oh,
You
wow.
know?
And he
Yeah,
told you that.
he told me that.
Oh, wow.
And I
And
think
when he
that
told you
was the
that, you didn't, oh, that was your,
that was pretty much the point where I said I'm not safe.
yeah, yeah.
I knew that I was not in a good situation when throughout the entire relationship. I was depressed all the time. I had insomnia. Um, I developed these pains in my body at some points where I just didn't know what it was. Doctors were baffled. They didn't understand, where all this was. And it was stress, obviously. It
Mhm.
was it was stress. But I think that was the day that I said, this is not a safe place. I'm gonna end up dead.
Mhm.
And I laugh now because you have to laugh. But it was a difficult situation. I was genuinely scared. And I think that's when I took on the waitress job and I was able to, hide my money and and get out eventually.
Mhm. What has your process been since you've got out? What kind of stuff have you done for yourself for healing yourself? Because you've gone through a traumatic relationship.
Right. I think a lot of journaling has helped me, which is kind of where this book comes from. Um, just I've done a lot of research, I've read a lot of books, um, learning about what narcissistic abuse is and
Mhm.
kind of identifying it in our relationship, in hindsight, has been very healing because it helps me to understand that I I wasn't crazy, I wasn't um exaggerating. I wasn't overreacting to everything that he was doing, and there was a name for everything. The cycle of, being good to me and treating me nicely and buying me flowers and taking me out on dates. It was all part of the manipulation. It was to reel me back in so that, after a couple of months he could go back to his old ways. And that's how that cycle keeps you in there for
Mhm.
years.
Mhm. 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 And how do you think it affected your daughters? Because you say you have two young daughters with him.
um it was difficult. I tried my best, I think, to not let them see the toll it took on me. But
Mhm.
obviously there were arguments, there were, you know, raised voices that happened around them because they were hard to avoid. If he confronted me in front of my children, I couldn't just tell him, back away. He wasn't going to hear that. He wanted to speak to me then and there. He wanted to argue then and there. So I think when they were a lot younger, it's very difficult to say this, but they would hide, they would hide in their room sometimes. I'd tell them, go to your room, close the door, and we'd be in the living room fighting, or we'd be in our bedroom fighting, or something like that. But I think once my oldest was about 10, I think, and they were 4 years apart, so my youngest was about 6. I started seeing signs of, bullying from the older daughter to the younger daughter. And I knew, I was like, this is affecting them. Like, this is, and it might be too late too, because they've been living with this is normal to them. So yeah, I think it was a culmination of all those things that made me say, this is it, I have to go.
Yeah, I totally understand that, because when you have young girls in that type of environment and they see that as the norm, you don't want them to go out and see that kind of behavior and think, that's okay, mom went through it and that's okay. So, it's
Right.
okay for
Yeah.
them. Mm.
Yeah.
And how are you doing now yourself? Where
Now,
are you now?
um, well, I'm closing in on my 46th birthday this month. So it's been many years since, that it feels like a lifetime ago, and I've grown as a person. I've learned who I am. I've learned, I guess, who I want to be, and independent from, being someone's daughter, someone's wife, someone's mother, just me. And I think that has been like the biggest blessing. And it's taken years. It's taken, I want to say, at least 15 years for me to learn that. And these past, 5 or so years, it's been good. I'm finally at a place where I feel like completely free, and I feel like this is the time to share my story and be able to help others, because I've done all the healing. I've done everything I can for myself. Now it's time to help others and help them get through it and help them see the signs as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic. So you're in the process of writing your book, or it's
Yes.
written? You're still in the
It's not
process?
written. I'm in the process of writing it. But I have all the basic stories that I want to tell
So
others.
when do you think this book is going to be out?
Well, I definitely feel like I will be self-publishing. So I'm hoping next year, if not early 2026.
Okay, sounds good.
Mhm.
Sounds very good. Very good. I'm so glad for you to come on here today and share your story with us, because there are going to be so many women who are going to be like, you know what, I've been in a relationship like that. I mean, like, I think there's very few women who haven't. I
Right.
myself can say that I was in one of the relationships I was in. Yes, definitely. It's happened such a long time ago that narcissism wasn't a word that was even used at the time. But when
Right.
you think back, yeah, absolutely. So
Hmm.
thank you so much for sharing your story today. Can't wait to see the book. Can't wait to have you got a name for it?
I'm still workshopping the name.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming in. Thank you for telling your story. And I'm sure a lot of my subscribers will be getting a lot from this. Thank you so much. And
Great.
bye for now.
Thank you.